Okay folks, coming to an arriving position wherever you want to be. So you may want to be seated wherever you feel comfortable, maybe in a chair, you might be seated on the floor, and you may be standing, whatever you find comfortable. Today's practice is joint mobility, moving and stuck and trapped tension around the body. So we can either be in two states. When we're in this kind of mid-state, where we're in homeostasis, where we're quite calm, okay, that's where we want to be, and that's what yoga helps us to be in. When we're in anxious, above that, this kind of, when we're very, very anxious, we get trapped energy in the body and we need to move that around. But also as well, we can drop into ventral vagal where we can feel stuck, and that's when you feel like you don't want to get out of bed. But moving the body and getting the body moving is so important. Okay, because tension gets trapped in our bodies, and there's a really good book by Gabor Mate, and he talks about how chronic stress is linked to chronic disease and chronic pain. And we can use yoga to help us to work with chronic stress. We can relieve chronic pain and chronic disease because we can work with the body and the breath. So arriving, finding your seat wherever you want to be, finding wherever you want to position your feet. I've got my feet on blocks because I've got very short legs. And you might want to check in with maybe you want to check in with your posture to aid your digestion and to aid breathing. Breathing is connected to our autonomic nervous system and our stress response. When we're breathing well, we're breathing in our abdomen rather than in our chest and our shoulders. So you may want to lift through the crown of the head. You may want to notice the position of your spine. You may want to lengthen the spine. You might want to notice where your shoulders are and your shoulder blades. Maybe you want to relax them down towards the floor, maybe. And maybe you want to place your hands gently on the thighs. And we're going to check in and do what we always do at the beginning of a session. When we talk about self-care is quite a revolutionary act because you're looking after yourself, putting yourself first. We cannot give from an empty cup. We can only give from the overflow. So always prioritise your well-being. And the best way to prioritise your well-being is to notice. Notice where the stress and the tension is taking place. But before we do that, we're just going to check in with our environment. We're going to trick our nervous system into believing we're safe. Feeling safe is no accident. It's very, very important for your nervous system. It is running slowly, whirring away, looking for danger at all times. And that's what your nervous system is. We're not dealing with dinosaurs anymore chasing us, any kind of threats, but we are dealing with the threat of modern life, which is quite stressful. So you may want to start listening to sounds, maybe with your jaw and your face relaxed. You might want to notice any sounds outside of your room and inside of your room. And grounding is a really good activity. Grounding helps us to feel safe and secure. So you might want to feel your feet. You maybe want to feel where you're connected to anything that's holding and supporting you. It could be the ground beneath your soles of your feet. It may be your seat where you're positioned. Maybe you might notice the contact with the back of the chair. Maybe you might notice the attention of the sensation of your hands touching your thighs. You might notice the texture, you might notice the contours, you might notice the space between your fingers. And you might want to work in with the senses, which is a really good way of working with anxiety, listening, feeling. Maybe you might want to tickle your palate with your tongue. So you're stimulating your brain, but also you're stimulating that part of taste. So you might just want to tickle it. And maybe you might want to look around the room. Sometimes I like to pick out 5 things that look the same, maybe same colour, maybe same shape. You might want to notice where the doors, the exits and the windows are. Your entrances and your exits. And now as you come to a seated central position maybe, you might want to notice what your quality of your breathing is like today. How is the quality of your breathing? Do you notice that your shoulders lift as you breathe? Or do you notice that your abdomen expands when you breathe? So if you're stressed, it may be in your upper chest area. Are you holding tension there? See if you can maybe bring the breath down, maybe into the pit of the abdomen, into the stomach. So you're expanding and contracting your abdomen as if there's a balloon just behind your belly button. Maybe you might want to place your hands there just to give yourself a little bit of feedback. And today we're going to explore sensation. We're going to notice and focus on what we feel in our body. That's so important because yoga gets us out of our anxious head. The more we notice, the more we sense, the more we feel pressure, the muscles, the dynamics, the more that we can really bring ourselves into a place of calm. So you might want to check in and notice what your emotional tone is today. Maybe you could give it a little bit of an emoji, or you can name to tame it. Whenever we have difficulty with our emotions, mindfulness and yoga teaches us not to push them away. We tend to push away difficult emotions. We use substances, we use overwork, anything to distract us from what we're really feeling. So what we do is we try to name to tame whatever is going on. So we put a distance between us and it. We are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions. So you might want to just check in and go, yeah, I'm feeling a bit not too good today, but you're noticing. Just notice, let it go. And then maybe you want to notice anywhere where there's any sensations of tension in your body. So you might want to work with those areas of tension today, placing more emphasis on areas of tension. So imagine that you're in the security section of the airport and you're going through the booth where it's checking. So you imagine that there is a light that's going down from the top of your head and it's slowly checking each part of your body as it's moving towards your toes. So you're checking if there's any tension maybe in your face, maybe any tension in your jaw. Maybe you might notice some tension in your neck, tops of your shoulders and your shoulder blades. You might notice some tension in the front chest area maybe, or maybe the side of your ribs. Maybe you notice some tension in your abdomen, maybe your lower back. Tuning into the body is an important part of yoga. Maybe you might notice some tension in the hip area. Maybe you come into your arms now. Just come into the tops of the arms and the lower arms and the hands. Notice if you can tune into any areas of tension there. If you do feel any tension, just notice it. Just label it, let it go, move on. Just notice if you come back to your upper legs. Maybe notice if there's any tension in your hamstrings and your upper thighs. Notice any tension in your calves and your shins and your ankles. Maybe you might notice some tension in your feet. So noticing is a really good important part of yoga. We're noticing, we don't push things away, we accept, we lay out the welcome mat. There's a famous poem by Rumi called about the house, and I might read it out one day. So as you come back to your seat, as you arrive, if you maybe check in again with your postural alignment, lifting the spine through, away from the chair, you might want to pick an intention for your practice today. And if that intention feels for you what you want to get out of this practice, if you find it challenging, maybe you could set one for somebody else that you care about. What do you want for them? And maybe they want for you as well something that helps you with your well-being. It's a short positive statement in the present tense because you want that to be already happening. So if you want to flip the script about how you feel emotionally, you can make that sentence. For example, if you're feeling anxious today, you might want to repeat to yourself a couple of times, I am calm. This is what you maybe want from today's practice. And just repeat that inside of your mind. And give thanks when you're ready. And just let it go. So we're going to move through the practice of flow and moving trap tension towards a sense of choosing joy and gratitude for what we have, which is a bit of a challenge at the moment. We feel as though our space and our world has restricted. So we're going to start a little bit with a little bit of breath to movement, if that feels available to you. So if you want to, you may want to bring your fingertips to touch together as if you're holding an orb between your hands. And maybe you want to on the inhale, open your arms wide. And on the exhale, as you bring your fingertips together to press, inhale, wide, maybe, exhale, fingertips to touch. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And you might notice the pattern. Keep repeating in your own time. Decide on your own rhythm and the way that you would like to move. You might notice the pattern of the breath. You might notice the movement and the rhythm. So keep moving in the way that you feel right for you. Moving in your own pace. Moving in your own speed. Almost as if you're expanding and contracting a balloon as you expand your hands out and bring your fingertips together to press. And then when you feel ready, coming back to the centre, when that feels available to you, you might want to start shaking your hands. So we're moving the energy through the body that gets trapped and gets stuck. So you might want to start shaking your hands lightly, maybe. And then maybe you might want to shake them a little bit harder. Maybe you might want to raise your hands a little bit more. And you might want to notice how that feels. You might want to notice where you feel that sensation in your body. Where you notice that sensation. Just explore how that feels. Where do you feel it the most? And you maybe not feel anything at all. And then when you feel ready and you want to come back to your position, your centre, just maybe you want to place your hands here on the back of your thighs. So we're going to start moving through a little bit of mobility first before we move into some of the bigger movements. So when we think about mobility, particularly for me for arthritis, trying to move our joints as much as we can to keep them nice and supple. So when you feel ready and that's available to you, you might want to outstretch your hands and make your hands into fists and then point your fists towards your body. And then on the inhale, raise and spread your fingers wide. On the exhale, maybe you want to make fists pointing towards your body. And maybe on the inhale, as if you're saying stop in the name of love, pointing your fingers out nice and wide, up to you. Now you can repeat this as many times as you want. Maybe you want to move with the breath. Inhale, fingers wide, maybe, and exhale, fists towards your body. If your arms get tired, you can always lower your arms and continue this movement. Maybe you might notice you might be holding some tension in your shoulders. Maybe you might want to relax your shoulders, blades down, gliding down the back of your body. And then when you feel ready, come back to centre and we'll do a little bit of working with taking our... So we're going to work with our toes. So we're going to work with pointing and flexing. So it's up to you how you want to do this. I'm going to take my heels, I'm going to take them further forward on the floor. Okay, that's up to you. Or maybe you might want to pull your knee in towards your chest. That's one option. Or the other option, heels to the floor. So point, maybe you might want to point on the inhale, and on the exhale as you lift your toes towards the ceiling. Maybe when you point, on the exhale, inhale as you lift your toes towards the ceiling. And see if you can explore that sensation. Where do you notice sensation in your physical body? Where do you feel it? And think about how you move. Think about your rhythm, maybe thinking about your breath. Point and flex. And when you feel ready to come out of this position, move into ankle rotations, that's up to you. So there's no one option for ankle rotations. You might want to place your ankle on top of your knee. You might want to bring your knee in towards your chest. Or maybe you just want to have your foot near the floor. So as we start, maybe you want to start to rotate one foot in one direction. So ankle rotations when you feel ready. So if there's any cracks or pops in there, don't worry, it's just nothing to worry about. And then maybe you might want to circle your foot in the opposite direction, and you might want to notice how that feels. Notice in your body where you feel the sensation of the movement, and how you move and how fast you move is always up to you. You can stop at any time. And then when you feel ready, you might want to swap to your other foot. So however you're doing it, whether it's your knee towards your chest on there or on the floor, maybe you want to rotate one foot in one direction. And again, noticing sensations in the rotations. So all this trapped tension and energy gets trapped in the body. It's not going anywhere. Stress is meant to be released. Animals in nature, once they've had a stressful event, imagine the rabbit being chased by the fox, gets away from the fox. Animals in nature, they shake that tension out. We don't. There's a lot of shame involved in kind of shaking or showing emotion in public. And then maybe you want to circle your foot in the opposite direction. So what we have to do is we have to release that energy, get it out of our bodies. And then when you feel ready, come back to centre and we'll start working a little bit more mobility into the legs. So just be mindful if you've got any hip or mobility issues to do with your lower body, just remind yourself of where and how far you're going to go with this. So you've got one option here. So it's a straightening and bending. So you have one option, okay. On the exhale, bring your knee towards your chest as close as it wants to go. And then the inhale, straighten. So taking your heel towards the floor. So maybe exhale, knee to chest. And inhale, straighten. And how fast you go and how you want to go, it's up to you. My hip's clicking really badly. So you might notice some sensation, you might notice some sensation in your core, you might feel that you're working your core a little bit, you might notice some sensation in the tops of your thighs. Just notice how that feels. And how far you bend is always up to you, it's always a choice. And then when you feel ready, you might want to go to the opposite side and try the other leg. So maybe you want to exhale as you bend your knee towards the chest. And inhale as you straighten the leg. So you might feel comfortable, make sure that you're comfortably seated on your chair, that you're feeling stable. So how you move, how fast you move, and whether you use your breath with the rhythm of it, noticing the pattern of the breath is completely up to you. And then when you're ready, you might want to come back to centre. So you might want to take your legs slightly wide as you come towards the edge of the seat. And you might want to try to work on some gentle rotations of the hip. So as you exhale, take your toes out. Okay. As you inhale, bring them in. Sorry, it's the other way around actually. Exhale in, inhale out. So exhale in maybe, and inhale out. So you're rotating, externally rotating, internally rotating, if that feels available to you. So inhale maybe out and exhale maybe in. And you might notice, focusing on that part of the body, maybe you might notice the pattern of your breath as you move with the body, noticing sensation, noticing any muscle dynamics, noticing any tension maybe, where you're holding patterns of tension. As you go in and out. And then when you feel ready, you might want to come back to centre. And you might want to start looking at a little bit more of hip rotations here. You can do this seated or you can do it standing. So maybe you might want to lift and draw circles with your knee. And how far and how wide you draw circles with your knee is completely up to you. So you could do this standing with your hand on the back of the chair. Or you can do this seated. You can turn anywhere, you can sit at the front or the side. Doesn't matter how big or how small these rotations are. And then when you feel that's ready for you, you might want to draw your circles in the opposite direction maybe. You might notice and focus on that muscle dynamic again. Notice what sensations you're feeling. And then when you feel ready, you might want to go to the opposite leg. So you might want to start rotating that leg. How far and how fast you go. And whether you actually rotate your leg at all. If you need help, use your hands to grab out, to hold your thigh maybe. Or if you feel more comfortable doing it standing, it's completely up to you. There's always a choice. And then when you feel like you want to, go in the opposite direction maybe. And then when you come to a seated position, okay, so you might want to take your arms out in front of you, making fists on the inhale, and maybe on the exhale, get your fists maybe to touch your tops of your shoulders. So maybe inhale out and exhale, tops of the shoulders. Maybe you want to spread your fingers as well this time. So maybe you want to spread your fingers wide on the inhale, and on the exhale, gently bring your soft fist towards the top of your shoulders. And you may notice what's going on there. You may notice the pattern of your breath. You may notice any tension, maybe notice some muscle dynamics in the tops of the shoulders maybe, or underneath. And then maybe you might want to just place your hands on your shoulders. And maybe you might want to, maybe on the inhale, have your elbows out wide, and on the exhale, bring your shoulders together. Inhale wide maybe, and exhale, bring the shoulders together. If you feel as though you want to pause at any moment, maybe you're holding a little bit of tension in your shoulders and you just want to shake it out, please do, and come back to join us when you feel ready at any time. It's always a choice-based practice. You're always welcome to observe, to move, to step out, to join in at any time. So you might want to explore that sensation in the muscle dynamic as you take your elbows out and maybe in. So think about this next pose as you come back to centre. So a little bit, if you remember the Bangles, 1986, I was at art college. I am that old. I'm not saying that yoga is the fountain of youth, but it does help. So you might want to maybe take your arms out to a cactus arm position, maybe. If that's not available to you, you might want to just have it a little bit lower, okay? So if you feel as though you can't get your elbows maybe parallel to your shoulders, fingertips point towards the ceiling, so that's inhale, maybe. And then exhale, you might want to point your fingers down. Maybe inhale up, and exhale down. Inhale up maybe, and exhale down. Inhale up, and exhale down. And maybe inhale up, and exhale down. So coming back to your seat, you might want to try to do some soft kind of circles. So maybe you might want to place your hands on your hips, and maybe you might want to try to do some gentle circles in one direction, moving your upper torso around the lower body. Maybe you want to add the breath, maybe not. Maybe you might want to inhale as you come towards the front and exhale as you come towards the back. Focus maybe on that part of the body. Maybe notice how that rhythm and the breath works for you. Notice any physical sensations. And then when you feel ready, you might want to go in the opposite direction. You might want to move in the opposite direction. How far and how wide and how big, or whether you include your breath, is entirely up to you. And then when you feel like you want to come back to centre, that's great, that's fantastic. So one option here, it's up to you how far you want to lift your arms up towards the ceiling. So we're going to, I'm going to sit at the front of my chair. You might want to do that as well, so you feel nice and secure, because we're going to grab the back of the chair if that's available to you. So maybe on the inhale, you want to take your arms all the way up towards the ceiling, and then slowly, maybe on the exhale, take your hands back to touch the back of your chair, or you just, anything, you just take your arms behind you. Inhale, maybe up, and exhale. Bring your arms back and down. Inhale up. And exhale back and down. Inhale up. You might want to notice if your chest, lower ribs pop up as you take your arms up. Maybe you might want to just close that gap between your lower ribs and your hip points so you keep your core slightly engaged. Inhale up. Exhale down if that feels available to you, and really notice, see if you can notice the rhythm and the movement and the breath. Notice the pattern, notice the sensation, notice what's going on as you move through. And then when you feel ready, you might want to shrug your shoulders out a little bit, maybe give a little bit of a wiggle, and then maybe moving on to the neck area. So bearing in mind that if you've got any neck issues here, as we inhale, maybe you want to lift your chin up towards the ceiling, and exhale, bring your chin down towards your chest. That's always a choice. How far you go is always up to you. Inhale up, and exhale down. Now, why are we doing a lot of rotations and movements like this? It's very soothing and calming to the nervous system, because you're flowing and moving, and that really helps anxiety. So you may want to inhale as you lift your chin up, and exhale as you bring your chin down, and how far and how fast you go is always up to you. You might notice some tension or muscle dynamic in the back of the neck. You sometimes get tension in this space in between the cervical spine and the occipital ridge, which is like the bottom of the skull. So carry that a lot of tension there because your head is the weight of a bowling ball. And we do sit forward a lot, don't we? We get quite kyphotic when we're over a computer all day. So it's always good to check in with your posture whenever you can, as much as you can, just to make sure that you're not allowing your head to drop forward too much. And when you come back to centre, you might want to start to think about maybe doing ear to shoulder. So maybe you're lifting through the crown of your head, relaxing through the shoulders, nice long spine. Maybe take your exhale, take your right ear towards your right shoulder. And then maybe inhale to centre, and then take your left ear towards your left shoulder. And keep repeating, going side to side. And how fast you go and how far you go again is your choice. You may notice some muscle dynamic down this side of the neck. You might notice maybe that muscle dynamic extends all the way down to underneath your shoulder blade. So exhale, ear maybe to shoulder, inhale maybe to centre, and then exhale, ear to the opposite shoulder, and inhale to centre. And noticing that muscle dynamic, that whatever you're feeling. And then when you're ready, come back to centre. Now, one thing that I like to do when I like to get rid of tension or trapped emotions in my body to release is to do something called active breathing. With active breathing, you use the sound of ha to release the tension. Also as well, sound is really important for well-being. Singing is as well, because what you're using is you're activating your 10th cranial nerve, your vagus nerve, which is to do with your nervous system. It's a 10th cranial nerve that activates your larynx. It's also to do with your ears, down your neck, and it attaches itself all to your major organs. And when you have your fight or flight response, that's when you know that your tum's got butterflies in. So what we can do is we can work with vagal tone, which is really good for mental well-being. So bring your fists towards your heart centre. Maybe you want to sit at the front edge of your chair. So what we're going to do is we're going to push out a little bit and release with active breathing any tension. This is something I do with grief, with difficult emotions, with anger, with frustration. What we try to do in yoga is we try to be with the emotion, but to release the emotion and not be the emotion. So maybe you want to go on the inhale, squeeze your fist really, really tight, elbows towards the sides of your chest, and then ha as you push your fingers and your arms behind you. So when you're ready to do that, obviously with the sound off, that's really useful. If you feel uncomfortable doing this, you can say it inside of your head. Inhale, maybe squeeze the fist, and ha, as if you're throwing whatever is troubling behind you. Inhale, squeeze fist. Ha. Inhale, squeeze fist maybe. Ha. Inhale, squeeze fists. Ha. Inhale, squeeze fist. Ha. Now you might want to settle back into a position maybe because you might feel a little bit lightheaded. You might want to notice how you feel after that movement. You might want to notice any sensations in the body, maybe the heartbeat. Just check in just how you feel. So a nice little thing that I like to do is grounding. Grounding is so important. When we do a grounding breath, what we can do is we can work with our nervous system to calm it down. So we're going to do a little bit of walking on the spot. So I like to use a little bit of pressure. The more pressure you press down with your foot, the more you're going to ground into this position. The more you focus on the sensation in your lower body, the more you're getting out of your anxious head. Remember, when we are constantly ruminating, we're thinking negative thoughts. That is natural. It is your nervous system trying to protect you for looking for danger. That's why it's easier to be negative than it is to be positive, because we're hardwired to look for danger. But in a modern life, there is no dinosaurs. So we're going to do some walking on the spot. So as you inhale, lift your legs slightly, and as you exhale, press down. Inhale, maybe, and lift the opposite leg, and exhale, press down. So you might want to place your hands on your hips maybe, and then work on pressing down and walking on the spot. So as you inhale, maybe you lift your leg, and as you exhale, pressing down. You're mimicking the fight or flight response. When you're anxious, your body wants to flee or it wants to fight. Now, if you're not fleeing or fighting the stress, it gets stuck in the body. So we have to push and move it out. So walking on the spot may be of use to release that trapped tension. Or you can just go for a walk, which is what I do every day. I get up very early and go for an hour. Walking is good. Any kind of exercise is good. Gentle, useful, fresh air, nature, trees. So walking on the spot. So you might want to notice any sensations. What do you notice? Any sensations in the abdomen as you're walking on the spot? You might notice some sensations in the tops of the thighs. As you press down maybe on the exhale, you might notice that sensation of the foot into the floor. Another technique I like to do when I'm really, really stressed is I push the wall. Crazy, I know, but pushing against the wall really sometimes helps. So imagine that you're trying to push the wall over with one hand. It's like a version of going kickboxing or boxing, but without the kind of violence that's involved. You know, it involves a little bit of you getting that trapped tension out. And then come back to centre. So, working with the core. Our core here is our sense of agency, our sense of empowerment. When we are in a situation like now where we're all told what to do, socially distancing, can't do this, rules, can't do that, we lose our sense of agency. Agency is so important on anybody's journey of well-being and mental health, because you're taking control of the situation. You're not being passive to the experience. You are saying, this is me, I am here, I am taking control. So we've got an option here. So working with the core, that's always up to you. So coming maybe to the edge of your seat, you've got one option. So we're going to work with one leg and see how that feels. If you're going to go for two, working for boat pose, Navasana, you can lean back and lift both two legs. But it's all about balance and engaging the lower abs up towards your head. So if you ever feel as though you want to regain that sense of agency and empowerment, maybe you want to gently lift your lower abs up towards your head as you feel your lower back lengthen and your spine lengthen, and connect to that sensation there, your core. Now some people will say that activates that particular chakra to do with your sense of agency and empowerment, if you believe in chakras. But I always think your core is about you being centered and calm when everything is a storm around you. So you've got one option here. Maybe the first option maybe is to take your hands to the back of the chair. That's one option. Another option is you slightly lean back, is to lift one leg maybe, bending the knee maybe, and then if you feel confident enough, maybe you want to lean back and lift the other. Okay, that's up to you, depending on how you want to go. If you feel confident, you might want to take one arm forward and then the other. Okay, and don't forget to breathe. Keep your chest lifted and your spine long. Activate that core. You can always take your hands back and just have one leg up, and then try it with your other leg. So you can drop that one leg, you can come out of the pose at any time, remember that, and just lift the other into Navasana. And then when you feel ready, come back to your central position and just notice how that feels, how that activation of your core, how does that make you feel at an emotional level as well. So another grounding pose that I find very, very useful, grounding again makes you feel centered and safe, is you're coming into chair pose. Okay, Utkatasana. So you've got one option here. Maybe one option is take your hands, okay, on the back of the chair. Okay, maybe your feet are hip distance apart. So you've got chair pose, and very, very gently moving from the hip crease. So you're folding with a flat back. You're not bending your spine. Lean forward. That's one option. So one option for chair pose is to lean slightly forward and keeping your head lifted. If you feel as though you maybe want to go a little bit further, you might want to take your hands in front of you at prayer position or in front and slightly lift your hips off the chair. Slightly lift your hips off the chair and hold. Check your knees maybe your knees are going past your toes. See if you can maybe stop them from going too much past your toes. If your knees are not kneed, make sure that your knees are nicely stacked over your ankles. So you've got chair pose. Activate that core, lift your lower abs up towards your head, lengthen through the crown of your head and your spine. And then when you feel ready, okay, come back to a seated position, back to centre where you want to be. So coming to some standing poses now. You may want to put your chair in front of you. We're going to use the chair to hold. We're going to do warrior one, okay, and warrior two. So when we think about warrior one, as a standing pose, it's about empowerment again. It's about your personal empowerment because it's a strong pose. And when we think of warrior, we think of being the peaceful warrior, but also being strong and powerful. So you might want to step back from your chair, so it's further enough so your hands can reach the top of the chair. And you might want to take your left foot forward so that it's pointing at 12 o'clock, okay? And your right foot pointing at 1 p.m. So maybe you square your hips off to the front, okay? If you feel a little bit wobbly, just widen the width or take your leg out slightly wider to the side, okay? And place your hands on the back of the chair. So as you come into your warrior one, you may want to bend your left knee so that it drops over your left ankle. And you might want to notice the sensation, so maybe pressing down into that back heel. Maybe notice some muscle dynamic in that straight leg. And as you're pressing down into that front leg, you maybe notice some muscle dynamic in the outer hip. So you're coming into your warrior two, hands on the chair, maybe hands in front of the heart center. Or maybe you want to take your arms up in a kind of, and extend your arms up towards the ceiling, allowing your shoulder blades to roll maybe down the back so you're not crunching your shoulders up towards your ears. So that may be one position, or this position, or this position, or this position. Okay, so maybe we might want to come into a little bit of a hamstring stretch, working with these major muscle groups associated with fight or flight. They get very tight. I know when I'm stressed, my hamstrings tighten. So maybe we might want to come into pyramid pose. So to come into pyramid pose, maybe you want to straighten that front leg, just making sure that you're squared off at the front. And that may be all you want to do today. But if you want to come into a fold to work into your hamstrings, remember folding from that hip crease, the flat back, leading with your heart center, fold forward, tiny micro bend in the knee, and come down as low as it feels comfortable for you, and noticing any sensations in the backs of the thighs. Now, if you activate your thighs, maybe lift your kneecaps up towards your head, you're releasing your hamstrings a little bit more, and that's called reciprocal inhibition. So as you tighten up your front thigh muscles maybe, you might be able to go slightly deeper into the stretch. Remember where your edge is, don't push yourself too far. And maybe when you feel comfortable, you can come out of this pose anytime Maybe you want to inhale to come up with a flat back, lifting and lengthening, rooting to rise, really grounding into that position. So we need to not only give our hamstrings a little bit of love and attention, but working with our calves as well. So maybe you want to take your hands on the back of the chair, maybe your feet are parallel like train tracks, and we maybe want to do a few heel raises. So maybe on the inhale, you lift up onto the balls of your feet, and then exhale as you lower down. Inhale to lift, maybe, and exhale, maybe as you lower down. So maybe you want to do that. Maybe if you want to take your hands off the chair, maybe you want to lift and lengthen with your arms. So maybe you might want to add. Maybe if you feel comfortable and balanced, taking your hands up as you lift up and exhale as you come down. Checking your positioning of your feet, make sure they're nicely wide so they're nice and stable. So maybe your hands on the chair, maybe inhale to lift up, now exhale to lower down. Always got that option to take the arms with you if you feel that's right for you. And then when you feel ready, come back to centre. We're going to do a plank pose. So plank pose, normally, we all know plank, don't we? Plank on the floor. We're going to do a version of plank pose, but we're going to step back a little bit from the chair. So as you do it, place your hands firmly on the chair. Make sure you're quite far back as you can go without taking your hands off the chair. And then you might want to lean into the chair. Keep your elbows tight towards your chest, balancing a little bit, and you're working a little bit on your upper body strength. And then you might want to push yourself back a little bit. So it's almost like you're doing a little bit, okay, a chaturanga dandasana. So you might want to stay here, or maybe you might want to slightly come forward with really straight back. Keep your elbows tight towards your chest, flat straight back, one line of energy from the top of the head all the way back to your heels. So you are a plank of wood. So you might want to hold it a little bit closer towards the chair, or just far away from the chair. So you're building a little bit of that upper body strength. We need to do a little bit of weight bearing exercise. Really important for good strength as we get older, especially me now. I'm menopausal. Building up on that. So we need bone density and we need good strength in our muscles. Nice. So we're going to do our come back to centre when you feel ready. We're going to do warrior one on the opposite side. So you take your right foot forward maybe to 12 o'clock and you step your left foot forward as further back as it wants to go, comfortably pointing at 11 o'clock. Maybe you want to keep your hip points square to the front towards your chair. And then maybe when you feel comfortable coming into that warrior one position, dropping that right knee, bending that front knee so it's over the right ankle. So really you might want to work with that grounding sensation, pressing into the back foot, really pressing down and really focusing on that sensation in the back of the hamstrings and noticing any sensation as you really press down with the front foot. If you want to activate and make it a more active position, you can slightly lift your toes, and you might want to notice that difference in sensation as you slightly lift the toes. If you slightly lift the toes, you notice how it activates the muscles in your legs a little bit more. So that's up to you. Lovely. So when you feel ready to come into your pyramid pose, your deep hamstring stretch, so you may want to straighten both of your legs, tiny micro bend in both the knees. Maybe you want to activate those thigh muscles. Imagine you're squeezing your thighs towards each other as well, so you can release your hamstrings a little bit. And you may want to stay here, or maybe you might want to fold the flat back from the hip crease until you feel the sensation is enough for you. So you might notice what's going on there and feel that pressure in the feet and that muscle dynamic in the back of the thigh muscles. So you're working on that deep stretch. Just try to keep your spine long and your chest lifted. No matter how far you go, you've got to keep that spine nice and long. So we try not to curve our spine in yoga. We're trying to counteract all the over-sitting that we do sometimes in our lives. Because we'd work sitting, don't we? As opposed to the days when it would be grandparents and they're just grafted. Okay, inhale to come up with a flat back. Nice, lovely. So as we come back to your chair position, we might want to finish with some nice seated leg stretches. So this is where your strap is coming in handy if you've got one. So it doesn't matter whether you've got a yoga strap or not. Most places now sell yoga equipment, even the range down Clough Road does. It's always handy to have all these things available to you. So you've got one option. So hamstrings really do hold that tension. Okay. I remember before I used to be an English teacher. I still am actually, sort of, online, teaching English. But I was very stressed as a teacher. Less so now. I couldn't really touch my toes. There was so much tension in my hamstrings. It was unbelievable. So we're trying to get the from the ball of our foot, trying to get the strap onto the ball of the foot, and bend the other knee. Maybe place the foot on a block or on the floor. So you've got one option here. So you're holding the edges, the lengths of your strap, coming forward maybe at the front of your chair, spine long, chest lifted, and if that feels available to you, you can use the strap to gently guide to lift your toes up towards the ceiling. Flexing your toes maybe towards your head. So you can hold that there. That's one option. If you haven't got a strap, you can place your foot, you're sitting maybe at the front of your chair. You might want to do this as a deeper stretch, and you fold, leading with your heart centre with a flat back, and you're going to feel more of that stretch into the hamstring. So whichever one you're going to do, whichever one works for you, working with that stretch. So spine long maybe, chest nicely lifted. Just notice where your shoulder blades are. You're not wearing your pat butcher shoulders as earrings. And then release when you feel ready, and you might want to try it on the opposite side. So again, maybe placing it on the ball of the foot, and then extending the leg when that feels available to you. Now if you want to activate and release the hamstring a little bit more, maybe you want to squeeze the thigh muscles, the top thigh muscles, lifting your kneecaps up towards you. Spine long maybe, chest lifted. And then when you feel ready, release. So we're going to do a seated twist. So if a seated twist is not available to you, and that is an aspect that you have not got in your practice because it affects your spine or mobility, so always up to you. So you might want to come to the side of your chair, for example, sitting at the edge maybe, feet flat, maybe parallel like train tracks. Nice big inhale maybe, lift to lengthen your spine maybe, and then on the exhale you can twist maybe towards holding the back of the chair. Keeping your spine long so you're not sort of screwing your spine down like a corkscrew. It's almost like screwing the top down in a jam jar if you're not lengthening your spine. Keeping that nice space maybe between each vertebrae. And when you feel ready, maybe you want to inhale to lift and lengthen, and exhale, come back towards your knees. So if you want to try that the opposite side, coming towards the edge of your chair, maybe you have your feet parallel like train tracks. Nice big inhale maybe. Maybe on the exhale, twist as you lengthen your spine towards the back of your chair. And then when you feel ready, please feel free to come back towards centre, and then we'll start with a meditation. So you have an option here today. If you've got a yoga mat, you can lay on your back on a yoga mat with your knees supported. You can get a blanket. You can maybe put your calves on the seat of the chair so you can get a nice gentle inversion, okay, which is quite good for depending on your blood pressure. It can lower your heart rate, or you can just come to a seated position. So the guided relaxation meditation we're going to do today is all about choosing joy and gratitude. It's been proven, there has been psychological studies that if we reflect daily on gratitude at the end of the day, it can have a positive effect on our mental health. And choosing gratitude as an emotion is the easiest one to choose because We don't have to do anything or change our life to actually participate in this kind of practice. And I found it a very useful practice to do, particularly during lockdown, because we tend to spend too much time focusing on what we're missing rather than actually counting the blessings of what we have with us. And it has been psychologically proven in studies that some of the happiest people, though their lives and circumstances are challenging, are the ones that practice gratitude every day. I watched a wonderful film. She was an African American woman who worked with deprived children in the States, and she said that gratitude for everything that she has and showing gratitude for everything has made, and she has been proven to be one of the happiest people on the planet, apart from the obvious Buddhist monks. So I'm going to sit down for this practice for me. I'm going to take the opportunity to guide you through this. Now, you can have your eyes closed or a soft gaze, and I want you to pick the position that suits you best. You might have a blanket handy. You might just want to do this practice seated. You don't have to have your eyes closed, okay? That might feel uncomfortable for you, but of all the positive emotions we can feel, definitely, whether it's excitement or hope or pride, or fun or love and so on, gratitude is so easy to choose. And everyone has something to be grateful for, and whenever you want to tap into this experience of sort of deep inner joy, try to begin with the act of choosing gratitude. It's so important. Now, the following meditation will help you to focus the mind and should help you to really think about, the appreciation that we have. So whether your eyes closed or your soft gaze and you found that perfect relaxed position, I want you to visualise, to bring to mind things in your life that you're grateful for. You might want to visualise them one by one. Maybe you want to allow yourself to feel a sense of gratitude for each as you individually try to visualise them. And you can practice this as a meditation. You can practice this as a written reflection, adding to your gratitude list every day, whether mentally or with a journal. And then maybe after you've tried to visualise what you're grateful for, it could be anything as simple as a cup of tea, a warm hot shower, the pet, the family pet, the duvet. So you can bring to mind now some favourite moments. It could be a moment of beauty. You may have seen blossom today. Somebody might have made you laugh. A small moment of pleasure from drinking your favourite drink, your hot cup of coffee in the morning maybe. Maybe it was a moment of connection with another person. Maybe you've learnt something new. It doesn't have to be today, it could be any time. And maybe it may be a satisfaction for being of service and doing something good for another person. Maybe your neighbour is isolating and you've been taking shopping round. And as each moment comes to mind, I want you to mentally say, for each one of them, I want you to mentally say thank you. Maybe now you want to move on from that section, and maybe you might want to bring to mind the memory of a time when someone thanked you. And as you think about this time, Maybe you might want to remember how it felt because they appreciated you. See if you can re-experience that feeling as if you're actually back in that moment. See if you can stay with the memory of somebody appreciating you. And how that felt. Maybe you can feel it somewhere in your body. Maybe you want to move on now to bring to mind people in your life that you would like to thank. Maybe there's somebody who, imagine each person and imagine how they feel because you've appreciated them. Notice how it feels to both extend and receive that sense of gratitude. That maybe there's some people that you've noticed recently have really done a lot for you. Just visualise them. Just imagine that you're actually saying to each of these people, thank you. And maybe you feel ready to move on to remembering a time when you felt great joy or deep peace. It may be a lovely day where you did something and you just went for a walk and you just felt like the weight of the world was off your shoulders. Maybe you felt some deep joy because something fantastic had happened. Or you just felt joy for somebody else, for what had happened to them. And as you think about that time, see if you can recall it in detail and just try and notice with all your senses how it felt in your body. See if you can re-experience it. That feeling of joy or peace, wherever it was, whatever it was. And maybe the challenge of it now is just to drop the details of that memory and see if you can stay with the sensation of experiencing joy in your body. Maybe you could just hold on to that sensation now that you've lost the memory. Can you feel that sensation? We feel our emotions in our bodies first before we feel them anywhere else in our mind. And then finally, you might want to bring to mind the memory of a time when you laughed. Or simply imagine laughing about anything. Maybe you laughed so much you cried. Tears of laughter. Remember how that laughter felt in your body and see if you can re-experience that feeling. If you re-experienced it, can you feel yourself? Can you maybe feel emotion? Can maybe you feel yourself smiling? Noticing. And then when you feel ready to come out of this practice, start to bring your awareness back to your body. See if you can stay with the gratitude and joy that you've done in this practice today. And just realise that these sensations come from our own mind and they come from our own open heart. Because gratitude and joy happens inside of us, not to us. And to that, and to end the meditation, try to remind yourself that joy is your true nature. Joy is you. Joy is life. You might want to start listening to sounds and connect with any sensations to whatever is holding and supporting you. Maybe your feet, maybe your sensations of your body against the floor of the chair. And you might want to start slowly moving. You might want to start making small movements into big movements. You might want to slowly open your eyes. You might want to look around, get a sense of your environment. Notice where you are, the time of day, where you are. And then just as a final gratitude for yourself, because at the end of the day, you have chosen to come to this practice and you have chosen to choose gratitude and joy. So be thankful, and please just say thank you to yourself, because you have given yourself a lot of gratitude today, because you have practiced yoga and you practiced self-care and you put yourself first. So thank you very much. I hope you can join us again next week.